Okay, so welcome to Probability and Stats Math 165. We just went around and introduced ourselves, and now we're jumping into the section of the meeting today where we're going to talk about some of the administrative stuff in the course. So the main kind of landing pad for the course is the Blackboard site. The easiest way to get to it is just to go to courses.ccac.edu, and then you can log in with your same username and password as your email or the portal or any of that. You can also get here through the portal at my.ccac.edu, but sometimes it can be a little, a little finicky to get that to work correctly. This is the Blackboard Ultra display. I personally don't like this display because there are just a bunch of little annoyances. Like you can see current courses as selected, but for some reason I have a spring 2022 course and a fall 2023 course that are all populating. But if I go down to spring 2024, I can see my classes. I use the deprecated view, so I don't know how long this will be available for, but if you're interested, you can use this direct link and that'll take you to the old view, but it's a lot cleaner. You can kind of control click on things and open up a bunch of tabs at once. And, I like having tons of tabs open because I just open up all of my classes and then go through and check in on each of them and close them as I'm going through them. So things like that, that you can do on this view. And let me turn this off. And this is what you should see when you log into Blackboard, either through the Ultra view or through the deprecated site. Oh, sorry, I sent that as a direct message to somebody. All right, there we go. Now I sent the link to everybody. So the link to this site is in the chat, or for this site, you can just go to courses.ccac.edu and it brings up the Ultra view. So this is what you should see in Blackboard. You'll see it under the announcements tab. If there's anything I need to touch base about, I'll send out an announcement. Although typically with a Zoom class, because we do meet a couple times a week, usually I'll just make whatever announcements I need to make in class. But if there was something like, I needed to cancel a class at the last minute, or there was a change like that, I would send that out here in the announcements. And these announcements should also get sent to your email. We have some useful websites here, some CCAC information, some third-party math sites. So if you're looking for just, a different approach to a problem or a different way of explaining it, something like that, these are other nice resources, or especially if you're looking for brushing up on some of the prerequisite material. One thing is, in this course, we'll use Excel a reasonable bit. We won't be using it every week, but when we do use it, it will be important for you to be a little bit familiar with it. You don't have to be a power user of Excel. You don't need to know all of the functions, but having a little bit of an introduction to Excel, Microsoft Excel, the kind of green X that's in the Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint and all that, that'll definitely be helpful. If you've really never experienced Excel before, the book does have resources. It does have references where, as you're going through the material, it'll tell you how to do the things in Excel. And you can always just go to Google and, say Excel, whatever, plot, say distribution or something, and you'll come up with all kinds of videos and websites and all kinds of things that will, that'll lead you in the right direction. But if you're looking for something a little more structured, I particularly like this course from a company called Coursera. You can create an account for free, and you can get access to the content for free. They call it auditing the course. Sometimes it can be a little challenging to find the link, but when you go to enroll in the course, you can look for the link that says something like audit this course for free, something like that. You won't get like a certificate or something like that. And sometimes some of the things like quizzes and stuff are a little more restricted in that view. But I really like this course, and especially so many of you are going into business or business related fields. Really getting a handle on Excel is going to be super helpful for your business courses also. But even if you're not going into business, learning some of the basics in these weeks 1, 2, and 6, or modules 1, 2, and 6, I think will be really helpful for this course. So again, it's completely free. I'm not trying to sell you something or anything like that. Just make sure to use the audit this course option to get in for free. Or, if you wanted to, for some reason, sign up for it and get a certificate, if, you think that would be helpful for you, you're certainly welcome to do that. But that's definitely not necessary to access these couple weeks worth of content. And that just gives you a little bit more of a structured introduction. If you're the type who'd rather just kind of poke around and kind of Google things and figure it out as you go along, that's perfectly okay too. But if you want a little more structure, I like this course. We have our Zoom information up here. So all of the links for the class meetings, as well as for office hours. Zoom's a little bit annoying. I can't use the same link for different meeting patterns. So for my Monday, Wednesday office hours, I have one link. For Tuesday, Thursday, I have a different link. So just make sure to use the right link for the right office hours if you want to pop in. One quick note on office hours is that Zoom's a little finicky sometimes whenever I open a meeting and nobody joins the meeting. So like if I open a meeting for office hours and I have it just sitting there, sometimes Zoom will just like randomly close out that meeting. It'll just, shut it down in the background. And a lot of times I just won't even recognize it because I'll have the little, the little window up in the right corner, and I'm doing something on email or something like that, and it just shuts down. So if you ever log into office hours and if it comes up and says something like, the host hasn't started the meeting yet, something like that, just wait a couple minutes. It'll send me an email and let me know you logged in. And then if the meeting is closed out or for whatever reason it's not open, then I'll log in, I'll start the meeting, and then we can touch base. So just, if you log in and it comes up with some funny message, just be patient, wait a minute or two, and then I'll be on to chat with you in office hours. We'll come back to the syllabus, but we'll go through the rest of the information here first. The course will use MyStatLab, or I guess it's called MyLabStats these days, but I'll probably call it MyStatLab or MyMathLab because that's what it was called for most of the time that I've been using it. And here are the registration instructions for MyStatLab. So pretty straightforward to get in. There is a 2-week free trial, so you can create an account, get logged on, all of that, even if you don't have your book or access code or any of that yet. If you buy an access code from the bookstore, then one thing that they've been doing recently is they've been giving you, a lot of students get confused by this. The bookstore will give you a code, but it's not the code for MyMathLab or MyStatLab. It's a code for this brightwave.redshelf.com. It's a code for the bookstore's website. So how it works is you would log into the bookstore's website, create an account, log in. You'd enter the code that the bookstore gives you on their website, and it will generate a code that's the MyStatLab code. And that's the code that you have to put into MyStatLab. It's kind of annoying because there's that extra step. I know that it seems kind of crazy, but the reason they do that is because historically we've had trouble with getting the right access codes for the right publisher site. So like there's MyStatLab, but there's also My Accounting Lab or My Econ Lab or My Math Lab, or there's MyStatLabs associated with different textbooks. And some of the codes are very specific as to what they actually will let you into. So like if you have a code for Triola's MyStatLab, it might not let you into a My Econ Lab or something. And this is just their way of kind of controlling that logistical problem. So they print you out a code and you go to the correct, we're not using Cengage. Yep, we're using MyMathLab. Yep, so they'll print you out a code, and you go to their website, and then their website will know what course that code should get you into, and then it'll generate the my stat lab code. So it's just a way around that logistical issue, that supply chain issue. We used to have, physical cardboard, physical pieces of cardboard that you would like rip off the rip strip, and it would have the code on it. But the problem is, if you ended up with the wrong piece of cardboard for the wrong course, then it was just a huge hassle. Or if the bookstore didn't have enough of those little pieces of cardboard, then we'd be waiting a few days for them to get a new shipment in. So you can imagine that this is just solves a lot of those logistical problems. So it is an extra step, which is annoying, but it solves, I think, more problems than it creates. The textbook information. So I have the textbook over here. We're using Elementary Stats by Mario Triola. Pretty standard introductory textbook. There are several different versions of this. You can see it's Elementary Stats using Excel. There's also using the TI-83, 84. I think there might be one that doesn't say using anything. So there's quite a few of these. So make sure that you go to the bookstore's website to figure out exactly which one you need. For technical courses, especially courses like stats, but really for maybe any math course or really any science-based course or STEM course, I think it's a lot of times good to pick up a few extra books. Sometimes you read through a book and you read a certain chapter and you're just really confused, or the way that I presented it just doesn't click with you. But maybe you read that material in a different book, and that person just said it the way that really clicks with you, or they have an example that just made a lot of sense for you. So some other books that are nice to just kind of have in your library, and these are all super cheap. Don't go spending $200 on a book or something like that. You can get older editions of these for dirt cheap, either on Amazon or half price books or something. But Sham's Outlines, if you haven't used these before, they have one of these for pretty much any technical field, whether it's in math or physics or the sciences. But basically what these are is just problem sets to, they go through a really quick introduction to a topic, and then they just drill problems. They show you a bunch of worked examples, and then give you some examples you can work on your own. So a lot of students like Sham's Outlines. There's another similar book series that's come out more recently called the Humongous Book. So like the Humongous Book of Statistics or the Humongous Book of Calculus or whatever. So the Humongous Book series is, it does kind of a similar thing. I tend to like Sham's a little more, but a lot of students like the Humongous books as well. So that's another route that you could go. Another book, frankly, I probably would use this textbook if it had a good ancillary system like MyMathLab, but they don't. So I've never used this book, but it's probably my favorite stats book is Introductory Stats by Prem Mann. I just like the way that the material is presented and so on. And again, like it is a current textbook. So if you buy the newest edition, it's going to be like a couple $100, but you can go back 2 or 3 or 4 editions and probably pick it up for really cheap. But those are just some other useful resources. Or here's another textbook that I've used I think 1 or 2 semesters in the past, the LaRose book. A couple of kind of fun resources, and these are probably things you could get at the library or something like that, but this How to Lie with Statistics and Statistics You Can't Trust. So just this How to Lie with Statistics is a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek title, but these are kind of we'll see that there are some misuses of statistics, either intentional or unintentional, and these are more like kind of narrative books, a little less like textbook style, but just kind of introductions to kind of how to be careful with interpreting statistics. And then lastly, a couple of books that are, I would say, you know, maybe just a half a step higher than what we're going to be covering in this course. They should definitely be approachable for folks after we cover the relevant topics in this course. And if you want to go a little bit further, or if you want a slightly different approach to a couple of these topics. So one of them is Undergraduate Econometrics by Hill, Griffiths, and Judge. This is a nice introduction to regression modeling, which is super important in like machine learning and AI, and also in the business and finance fields. So we'll be just scratching the surface of regression. But if you want something that's, you know, that goes a little bit more in depth, you can take a look at this book. You do not need calculus for that book. So that's one of the big pluses of that book. They've written it in such a way you don't need to know calculus to understand what they're talking about. But definitely if you're going into a machine learning type field, an AI type field, or going into the business fields, you know, I think that's a good resource. And then for those going into the medical fields, Stanton Glance's Primer on Biostatistics. Again, you know, both of these are kind of current textbooks that if you get the most current edition, it's probably expensive, but go back a couple editions, get a used copy that's 2 or 3 editions old, and you're probably going to be, you know, in the $5 or $10 range or something like that. Can I show the first one? Sure. I don't know exactly which first one, but the Undergraduate Econometrics. And these are also in the textbook information tab on Blackboard, or Primer of Biostatistics. So those were the two that I showed more recently. Yep, sure. So Primer of Biostatistics for folks going into like the medical fields, or for folks going into those fields, this is nice because it talks about things like hypothesis testing and confidence intervals, things like that, at a greater depth than we'll go into in this course. But it really ties it much more closely, I think, to actually what you might read in a research paper or a journal article. So again, it just goes, you know, maybe like a half a step deeper than this course, but should be approachable by folks after you get through confidence intervals, hypothesis testing in this course. Correct. So you need to have access to this book, Elementary Stats Using Excel by Triola, but access can be gotten through the MyStatLab system. So if you're okay using an ebook version of the book, whenever we talk about MyStatLab, you'll see that book is embedded in the MyStatLab access. If you want a physical copy of the book, you can either buy it from the bookstore, or what I would recommend is just buy the online access to MyStatLab and then get like an edition or 2 older. Find a used copy on Amazon or Half Price Books or something like that. And you can get it a lot cheaper than buying a brand new book from the bookstore. I always try to use, I try to stick with the textbook until the bookstore is like, you know, beating down my door to get me to change the book. So I think this book is 1 or 2 editions old now. So I always try to use the oldest edition I can get away with, that I can get the bookstore to let me use. So that way there's a lot of used copies out there for you and all that, but you will need access to MyStatLab. And again, if you're happy using the ebook, go for that. You know, just use the ebook through MyStatLab. Otherwise, yep, we're going to talk about MyStatLab in a bit. So if you're happy using the ebook, just use it through MyStatLab. Otherwise, if you want a physical copy, you can either get it from the bookstore or get one secondhand to kind of go along with the course. And then the instructor information, just kind of a boilerplate here. Okay, so moving on to the syllabus. There's a couple of things here. We'll talk about the syllabus in a decent bit of detail in a minute, but something that I'm trying this semester that's somewhat new to CCAC is this simple syllabus. This is a newer system, and it might show up better on your phone than the PDF. It has basically all the same information. It's organized a little bit differently, and then there's some kind of extra boilerplate stuff that the college just throws in there. So if you're having trouble getting this syllabus to come up on a phone or a tablet or something, you can try simple syllabus. It might look a little bit better. Here's the CCAC boilerplate. This is all of the random stuff that they want us to put in our syllabus, but I don't want clogging up the actual syllabus document and just making it harder to read. And then here's a workflow pointers document. So this is something also a little bit newer that we've been trying to do for all of our courses, is just to kind of lay out expectations, to let you know, especially in remote or online courses, what does a typical, say, weekly workflow look like, and what does workload look like? So in other words, what should you be doing each week for the class, and roughly how long should that take you? Now, of course, all of this is going to change a little bit depending on what section we're in, if we're in an easier or harder section, depending on your previous exposure to the material, your talents for the material, all of that. This can change in either direction, but this should give you a rough idea of what, a typical week might look like, and kind of what the typical time should look like for a given week. But as a general idea, you should plan on spending somewhere in the ballpark of 7 to 10 hours a week. If you're, a little shaky on your fundamentals, that might look more like, 8 to 12 hours a week, something like that. Or, at a more difficult week, when we're covering a more challenging topic, that might, be on the higher end. But I'd recommend reading through this and just getting an idea of what the recommended workflow is. Okay, so we made our way through the syllabus. The syllabus is really a contract between me and each of you, between each of you and each other person in the course, and really between each of you and kind of the greater college community as a whole. So there are a lot of parties to the syllabus, and this lays out the expectations that I and the college community and your fellow students place on you, as well as the expectations that you can place on all of those folks. So if I, issue you a grade that's not in line with the syllabus, you have a right to complain about that. But also if I issue you a grade that is in line with the syllabus, well, you should have known that that was the expectation of the course. So make sure to read through the syllabus carefully. There's some boilerplate here. This is all just kind of the general CCAC stuff I have to put in. Our class meets, if I can select it here, Monday, Wednesday, 10:20 to 12. It'll always be at this same link. The final exam will be during the week of May 6th. So the exams will be open for roughly a full week. So the final will be open from Friday to Friday, the midterm exam from Monday through Sunday, and you'll have any time during that week to take the exam. So we won't take the exams, quote, in class. With a Zoom class, that's not really there's no real benefit to that anyway. In a physical class, you can take paper and pencil exams, and that works a little better for students and for proctoring and all that. But this being a remote class, I open up the exam in a week-long window, and then you take it with the Examity proctoring service that we'll talk about in a couple minutes here. The text and required materials for the course, strongly recommend that you have a graphing calculator. We won't actually be doing graphing in the course very much at all, but the benefit of the graphing calculator is that it has a nice big screen, and if you're, let's say, averaging together 10 numbers, if you add them all up and then divide by 10, you can look back at the screen and verify you've typed in everything correctly. If you just have one of those small calculators, you type in the first number and do plus, and then when you type in the second number, the first one tends to go away. So it's a little harder to check your work. It's a little harder when you're doing longer calculations to just keep track of things with, a smaller calculator. So I do recommend a graphing calculator, something like a TI-8384. But if you have, a Casio or an HP or a different TI, that's fine. Access to my stat lab. Again, we'll talk about my stat lab in a couple minutes here. Access to Excel. And if you don't have Excel on your computer, you can use your CCAC access to get, I think it's like Office, is it 365 or 360? I never remember which one it is, whether it's like 360 like covers everything, or 365 like you can get to it anytime, anywhere. But you can get access to Excel, or for that matter, Word or PowerPoint, or any of those through your CCAC ID. Regularly checked email address. So make sure to check your CCAC email address at least once per day. If you're, attending another school, or if there's another email address you like more, you can always forward your CCAC email to that email. Just make sure to clean out your CCAC email every once in a while so it doesn't get filled up. Ability to participate in and connect to Zoom class meetings. So things like having a stable internet connection, a webcam, a microphone, and so on. Lots of resources available. As I always say, your tuition dollars have already paid for these, so make sure that you use them. If you have a question or a problem, the first thing that I would always recommend is pop in office hours or send me an email. Let me know. I'm always happy to answer any questions or help you with a challenging topic, anything like that. You can set up work groups with other students. This can be a little more challenging in a remote environment, but with that icebreaker, I think we kind of got an idea of kind of who's in what majors, and if you either see somebody in a similar major to you, or maybe you see somebody in a couple different classes of yours, maybe you could set up a work group with them and either meet on campus or meet virtually. We have an LAC, a Learning Assistance Center, as well as a math cafe at all of our 4 campuses, and I think there's a math cafe at West Hill Center now too. So all the campuses, and at least West Hill Center, but maybe the other centers as well, offer some form of tutoring. So the LAC offers one-on-one tutoring. So this would be, you schedule ahead, you go in, you meet with the tutor. This is a nice option for maybe if you miss a class or something like that and want to get caught up, or if you want to dedicated study time to study for an exam. And if you just have a couple of quick questions, or if you just want a place to kind of sit there and work on your homework and have somebody available if you come across a question, the math cafes can be great for that. Sometimes it can be difficult to find folks who can tutor stats. Stats is a little bit of a niche subject. So, if you were taking 090 or 108, like everybody can tutor those, but sometimes, finding somebody who can tutor stats can be a little bit challenging. But if that's something you're interested in, you can always reach out to the LAC folks, and they can tell you when they have people scheduled who are able to tutor stats. And then there are some other resources that I mentioned before, third-party ancillaries that you might find helpful. So the grading scale for the course, the grading plan for the course, is homework counts for 40% of the grade, and the midterm and final exams each count for 30% of the grade. So the grading scale I've given here, I always round up to the next full percentage point. So like an 89.1 would round up to a 90, and so on. Sorry, I just realized it's getting kind of cold in my office, and checked the thermostat, and the thermostat is not at the same temperature that it's set to. So I think my furnace has been having some trouble for the last couple weeks. So I think it might be on the fritz again. Okay, so the email policy, please allow one business or school day for an email reply. In the first week or so, I tend to get bombarded with emails, so sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to get back to you. But once things kind of get in the swing, it should, I should be back to you within 24 hours. If you ever send me an email and I'm not back within 24 hours, if I don't get back to you in 24 hours, please send me a follow-up, send me a reminder. Sometimes it gets buried under some administrative things or something like that, and I'd much rather handle it more quickly than kind of realize a week later or something as I'm going back through my emails that I missed an email. Okay, so we talked a little bit about expectations. So some of these things like teaching methods, these couple of paragraphs here, these are boilerplate, obviously. Don't cheat, don't get caught cheating. That's going to cause all kinds of problems, and none of us want to deal with that. Being a remote course, as I mentioned, there will be 2 exams. These will be proctored virtually through a service called Examity that we subscribe to. It's a third-party online proctoring platform. Now, you might have heard folks have trouble with Examity, some tech problems, things like that. Well, so Examity offers several different services. One of them is a live proctoring service, and that tends to be where folks tend to have problems. There is just a lot more there's a lot more that has to happen correctly in order for that system to work. So you need to connect through video conferencing with a live tutor. Sometimes there can be a language barrier. Sometimes there can be an internet issue on their end because they don't tend to be in the US. But with Examity's automated service, people have very, very few technical problems. So don't get scared away when you see Examity. If you've heard, students have trouble with that before, we're using the fully automated service, and that works, much more reliably than the other service, than the live proctoring. Each exam will be posted for roughly a week, and you can take it anytime during that open window. So that gives you a lot of flexibility as to when to schedule, when to take it. And that's a nice benefit that Examity offers. So instead of having to take it, on the class day, and then things like, okay, if you're sick that day and you need to make it up, it can be really hard to kind of find a time when both of us can schedule a time on Zoom for me to proctor it or something like that. So just having this ability to take it anytime during basically a 1-week period is super convenient. So make sure to read through all of these policies and procedures. I'm kind of hitting the high points here. So 2 more high points. The calculator that you use on an exam can only be a calculator. So you can use a TI-8384 or something like that, but you can't use, say, your phone as your phone as a calculator, or your laptop as a calculator. You will be allowed to use Excel on the exams. There's an embedded kind of Excel clone in my stat lab called StatCrunch. You can use that as well. And all this, I'll post more details about this on as we get closer to the exams. But the main thing is you can't use like a phone as your calculator. And then scrolling down here, we have midterm exam week, the week of March 18th. So you can see that the midterm exam will be posted and available from 9 a.m. on Monday the 18th through 11:59 p.m. on Sunday the 24th. Make sure that you don't wait until the last minute to take the exams. They're worth, each of them is worth 30% of your final course grade. If you miss an exam, that pretty much means that you can't pass the course. So, if you have a full week open to take these exams, don't wait until Sunday at 9 p.m. to take it and find out that there was some kind of glitch or a power outage or something, and now you missed the exam. Like, you don't want to put in all of that work just to end up, whether it's a half a semester or a whole semester's worth of work, just to end up, not passing the course on some goofy thing like that. So make sure to give yourself a buffer when you take these exams. When they're scheduled well in advance. So yeah, make sure to give yourself plenty of time for those exams. Final exam, same thing. It'll be available from Friday the 3rd through Friday the 10th. So a little more than a week. And again, that gives you a lot of flexibility when you can schedule and take that final exam. So make sure not to wait till the last minute for that. And then because we have to do something during our scheduled final exam time, we'll do a review. So this will be kind of an optional, basically just an additional office hours. You can pop in if you have any questions or anything like that. But it's, it's optional, it's not required. And if you want to, of course, you can take the exam before the 8th as well. Any questions on the syllabus before we move on to talk about my stat lab? Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of distracted by this whole HVAC thing. I had a tech out here 2 days ago who came out and supposedly fixed it. And I don't know, I was asking him, he did something. He took one of the pressure switches out of the loop, and it's like, you sure that's going to work? And he's like, well, I mean, it's been running for like 5 minutes now, so I think we're good. So I gotta call them back and see if they can get out here. This is always the way that it is with home ownership, is, the furnace doesn't go out on the 50-degree day, it goes on like the 10-degree day. So anyway, so this is my stat lab. You can get here going to, I usually just go to mymathlab.com and it'll redirect you. And then when you get into our course, you should see something along these lines. Your view will look a little different. This is kind of the instructor view, but it should look more or less the same as over here, except these options that have this little like slash through the visibility icon, you won't see those. The main thing that you're going to want to do on here is the assignments, whether they're homework assignments or exams, they'll pop up under this assignments tab. And you can see the first assignment is already posted, and it is due this Sunday. Again, there's a 2-week free trial, so you can follow those registration instructions, get logged on, get access to the textbook, work through the assignments and all of that for 2 weeks with no difficulties as you work out either how to get the access code or the textbook or whatever. You can access the textbook either in HTML format or the standard format. The standard tends to work a little better for me. The HTML tends to be a little glitchy for me. And you can see that this is the textbook page for page, like it would be in the hard copy version. So this is the same as the hard copy. And if you're happy using this ebook, you can just stick with this. If you want a physical copy, you can pick up an older edition, especially, is going to be a lot cheaper than a newer edition. There's nothing that you really need the newest edition for. So I'm not going to like assign you, this problem from this page or something like that. All of the homework assignments and everything will be through my stat lab. So you don't actually need the newest edition for anything. But if you wanted to match the ebook, you can go that route. But if you get an edition or two older, it's going to be cheaper. It's going to have essentially the same material. Maybe the page numbers and the problem numbers are a little different, but it'll basically have all the same material. The grade book will give you a rundown of your grade at any given point. This is kind of like a best current estimate of your grade. So there are some caveats, things like if you haven't even opened up or started, several sections of homework that are past due, whenever those turn into zeros from just being like past due, when they get a 0 entered in for them, that's going to affect your grade. But while they're just sitting there as past due and not started or attempted, they just don't affect the score at all. Things like as we work through homework but haven't had any tests yet, the homework will basically count for 100% of your grade, and then when you take the midterm exam, that midterm is going to count for like 60% of your grade, and homework will be down to 40%. So some things like that can throw off the calculation a little bit, but it's trying to give you the best guess at kind of where you stand currently in the course. There are a lot of other resources on here, so you can look at some of these review exercises with video clips where they work through the exercise, the solution. See if I can find one. Here we go. So here's like a video clip with answers to the review exercises. So there's tons of resources through my stat lab. And then also, I'm going to have to switch my share here in a second. So also, when you open up your assignments, you'll see that there are some other options. Let me change the size of the window here. So down at the bottom here, you have the option to jump over to the textbook to open up StatCrunch. If you, let's see, if you answer a question incorrectly, it tells you right away that it's an incorrect answer. You get that feedback immediately instead of, historically with paper and pencil homeworks, you would, spend, I don't know, an hour or something working through 10 or 15 problems. You'd hand them in. You wouldn't get that feedback until a week later. At that point, you've had another class or two where maybe you didn't understand what was going on because you misunderstood something from the homework. You get a bad grade on the homework. There's no real remediation there. At least in math, I mean, we love these online systems because you get immediate clarification. You say, oh, okay, that's incorrect. I better go back and look at, how to do this in the book again. I must have missed something. You then practice doing it, say, 10 times the right way instead of doing it 10 times the wrong way. You get a much better homework grade that way. You can, you can much more reliably get 90 to 100%. For most of these homework sets, you'll have 5 tries per problem. For the first assignment here, as you're getting acclimated to the system, I've given you unlimited tries, which you can see. Well, let me start this share again. You can see the number of attempts per problem you have here. So unlimited for this one, but for the next homeworks, it'll be 5 attempts per question. And then let me switch my share again. There we go. And what are we looking at? Which is not a voluntary response sample. Let's do this one. And then we get the immediate feedback. And different problem types. I don't think there are any of these on this first homework set, but some problem types have help me solve this tool, where for the more calculation-based problems, it'll kind of walk you through it step by step. So there's a lot of different options for help on here. And, of course, you get that benefit of closing that feedback loop super quickly. And you can see that it automatically updates. So question one is now marked correct. My current score is 10%, 1 point out of 10. And we have the last day worked is updated as well. So there's nothing special that you have to do whenever if you go through and you get all 10 questions right. You don't have to do anything special to kind of submit the assignment as a whole or to finalize the assignment. Whenever everything updates live, whenever you're happy with your score, you can just kind of leave it at that, close out the assignment, and you're good. Everything is just, kind of live updated. You don't have to do any kind of final submission of anything. If you see your score on here and you're happy with the score that you have, that's all you need to do. Okay, so are there any questions? All right, so I think that's about all the questions. I'm going to stop the recording.